Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. I would say afternoon session, evening session, or almost dinner session. We are very grateful that you are joining us here in Gastein, and also we welcome all audience online. And I know that this session is being recorded, so for our future viewers, we are grateful to have you here to discuss the risk and challenges for the European health data space. I think I don't have to open too much about the importance and significance of the European health data space. I was just at the session on the co-creation, the Gastein community letter to the European Commission, and we jointly agreed there that there is no other digital health initiative currently going on in the European Union with the bigger significance than the European health data space. And obviously this is for the businesses, for the research, and for the people, for better care and better treatment. This session is organized by the Digital Health Society and is possible to be done thanks to the support of the IQVIA to the Digital Health Society. My name is Karolina Mackiewicz. I'm the Innovation Director at the European Connected Health Alliance, which is the Digital Health Connector, and our data arm is the Digital Health Society. That's the part of our organization that connects the stakeholders to create the thought leadership in health data. So I'm very grateful also to be joined by our speakers here, and I think we have also one speaker online. If we could make this possible, the connection, that would be fantastic to bring our fourth speaker. If I can get the support from our team. All right, now we are here all, and yes, the title of the session is Reaching for the Clouds. Can the EHDS deliver on its high ambitions? We know that there is another plenary on the EHDS organized by the Commission and the Forum Gastein on Friday. So let's take this session as the prequel to the other one. And here, as I already said, we would like to unpack some risks and challenges to this ambitious project of the EHDS. We know that obviously this is the project for 10, 15 years or even longer. We know that some countries are already better equipped and prepared to implement EHDS than others. And here with my speakers coming from different sectors, they will shortly introduce themselves. We will unpack those challenges. So maybe then I will pass to my speakers. You already see them, their affiliations on the screen, but I will ask them to introduce themselves shortly and tell us where they come from and which perspective do they represent. Maybe we'll start here from Mario.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for the nice words of introduction. Very happy to be here with you. So my name is Mario and I'm working at the French Health Data Hub, similar to what is being conceived as a health data access body, and I'm European and International Affairs lead there, working on a number of projects, including the Health Data at EU pilot project. But I've also already seen Peter in the room. We also try to join other initiatives like the Darwin EU initiative, mobilizing health data. So we are very much committed to using health data for innovation and research.
Thank you. Cool.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicola Hamilton. I'm head of Understanding Patient Data, which is a small civil society initiative in the UK. We aim to make the use of health data more visible, understandable and trustworthy, working with patients, charities, the private sector, governments, health bodies. And my background before that was in the UK Civil Service, in the Department of Health and the UK Health Security Agency, also working on data initiatives.
Right. Tapani.
And good afternoon. My name is Tapani Piha. I used to work in the Commission, but I am now back to my home country, Finland, and I'm working with the Ministry of Health and Social Affairs in Finland, as well as the Expertise France on various EU projects.
Thank you. And then joining us online because of the train disruptions in Austria, Mani.
Hello. So I'm Meni Stiliadou. I work for Takeda. I'm heading health data partnerships in Takeda. But the main reason I'm here today is because I'm also leading the H2O project, which is a project which focuses on creating new data that can fuel the European health data space.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for those introductions, and also for all of you. We will have the numerous ways to participate in the session. So the session is over 1 hour. We will have introduction from Tapani Piha to the topic, setting the scene, bringing us all to this issue of the EHDS and risk challenges, potential pitfalls for the EHDS, and of course how to make it a success. And then we will have the panel discussion with all the speakers, and I would like to invite you all to participate. And you can participate in numerous ways. We will have the 3 Slido questions, so you can keep your phones and or the browsers open. And then we also take the questions through the app. We have here the Manuela Pausen, a member of the Young Forum Gastein, who will help us navigate through the questions and bring the questions to our attention here on the stage. And also we have the microphone, so we invite you to raise your hand and share your question or comment with all of us. So I think that now we can actually move to the first Slido question to warm us up a little bit and to also warm up Tapani before his setting the scene presentation. So if I may ask our colleagues from the organizing team to bring the questions. Right, so the question is, so you can join on the slido.com, and I think that we have here the QR code and the password. So we have the simple question for a start. What do you think is the biggest challenge for the success of the European health data space? Lack of infrastructure in healthcare systems, data privacy and security concerns, insufficient funding, slow policy harmonization across member states, lack of public trust and engagement. I see that 22 people are now, 27, okay, thank you for joining and participating in this exercise. All right, so currently we have data privacy and security concerns, lack of infrastructure in healthcare systems as the leading ones, but actually all of them get some attention and some votes. I think we can now move to so let's keep this in mind, you can still vote, and we will come back to this, and I would like to ask all the speakers for some reflections on that. But now I would like to move to Tapani Piha, the advisor of the Finnish Ministry, to give us a bit of introduction to the topic, to bring us all to.
Thank you, dear Gasteiners. Reaching the cloud. The EHDS regulation legal text will be adopted by the end of this year, and it should enter into force at the beginning of next year. If I were asked to describe this regulation and impact in a few words, I would say ambitious, massive, unique, a game changer, a huge implementation task. The text runs for 40 pages and covering nearly 40 articles on the secondary use of health data alone. So that gives you an idea of the magnitude of the task in front of us. We learn that the regulation will enter into force 4 years after, it will apply in the member states 4 years after entry into force. That means in early 2029. I would like to discuss 3 challenges in this presentation. One is the challenge of understanding the European health data space, creating clarity at the EU and the member state level. Secondly, preparing for the European health data space, investing in structures and people in the member states. And thirdly, building trust, making the benefits of the European health data space secondary use, visible to people, health professionals, researchers, and the industry. First of all, on understanding, the avalanche of data-linked legislation in the European Union, including the Health Data Governance Act, Data Act, Artificial Intelligence Act, and their interplay will create a clear challenge for the European health data space, how we will put all that together. It's a massive piece of legal text, and even people who have been working daily on it, they can tell me that understanding each and every detail of the legal text is difficult. But the providing of the clarity on that text will not come from reading the text over and over again. The clarity will come from implementing it. This clarity will stem from several sources. One clear and understandable, clearly identifiable source is the Implementation Act that the Commission will be producing and adopted in collaboration with the Member States. But the clarity will come from other sources also. The TEHDAS Joint Action and many other European projects, they will be working on the details and elements of this regulation. And through their work, they will produce guidelines and understanding of this regulation. And we will have in place the European Health Data Space Board and the steering group for health data at EU. And the decisions of those groups will shape and create understanding what we are aiming at. The second point, preparing for the European health data space. The Member States have a very different starting points to implement the regulation. The excellent survey by the European Health Data Space pilot showed that there's wide variation in current practice in the Member States. Many Member States don't yet even have legislation in place, structures, or human resources. And even in those countries who are more advanced, struggle to implement their systems. A positive sign is that the recent survey by the Commission showed that nearly 2/3 of the countries are reporting that they have an implementation plan now, but the maturity on different elements such as legislation, policy, compliance, leadership and governance is weak in many countries. So depending on you, whether you are an optimist or pessimist, you can see the glass 1/3 full or 1/3, 2/3 full or 1/3 empty. The regulation says that the Member State shall ensure that each health data access body is provided with the human and financial resources and the necessary expertise. That is an important provision, and it will be a legal text soon. But this implementation in Member States will require steady political will, spanning over several years, the strong will to make human resources and other resources available for use of health data so that the secondary use of health data will become reality in their countries. But perhaps I'm more confident that the central structures in Member States will be in place and will be up and running. But the data holders, many of them will run an uphill task. Just think about the Article 33 of the regulation, which says that there are 17 categories of data which will need to be made available. And so many data holders, such as hospitals, they may not be ready for that task. And many hospitals or smaller health centers, they may not have this academic inclination as some of the university hospitals, which understand very well the need for scientific research. The Commission has put in place several initiatives to prepare the European health data space. The TEHDAS Joint Action has produced already lots of documents, and it will provide concrete guidelines and technical specifications. It will deliver those proposals now in the 3 waves, running public consultations starting in January 2025, so next year, and that involves all the stakeholders. The European Health Data Space pilot has already produced a common data application form. In April, they have produced the metadata catalogs analysis and a proof of concept for the health data at EU. And finally, the Horizon Project Quantum is developing a data quality and utility label. On the building of trust, I think that convincing the citizens may not be as difficult as we sometimes think. Many studies show that the people are very supportive to health research. But we need to be very careful that we are not allowing any public relations mistake. One data catastrophe might destroy all the goodwill we have in a very particular country. We need to focus on making positive stories so that people understand what we are working on. But more is needed to convince health professionals who have the burden of creating the data and recording it. And this means concrete support their work. They are already burdened in their everyday work of caring people. Researchers and industry may need to know better about the new possibilities, such as cross-border registries and databases, dataset descriptions, and other things which are made available through the regulation. But the experience from countries who have been advancing in this show that convincing researchers may not be always so easy, as they may not see the benefits of one-stop shop. Involving the stakeholders is important on two counts. One is to understand the needs of different stakeholders, and also, secondly, creating the confidence in the new system. But finalizing on the momentum of the implementation, the implementation will be a huge task, spanning over many years. The regulation wisely asks the evaluation only after 8 to 10 years. As the legal process is now nearly over, other initiatives may easily catch the political attention, for example, artificial intelligence or the cybersecurity in health system, in healthcare. They might be the hot topics now. But I do have a great trust in the Commission that the Commission will make the health data at EU available and steer the process very well. It will not only depend on the health commissioner. The Vice President designate, Madam Henna Virkkunen, who is responsible for data sovereignty, is tasked to present a European data union strategy. I'm sure the European health data space will feature strongly in this initiative. The strategy will offer a great opportunity to keep political attention to the health data space. The two reports by Mr. Draghi and Letta on the competitiveness and single market, they have a heavy emphasis on the European health data space. Finally, I would like to repeat what the Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said when she tasked her Commissioner designate for health: you should work to complete the European health data space.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tapani, for bringing us to the topic. And just for a future reference, we saw that Tapani was affiliated with Expertise France. In fact, Tapani comes from Finland and is the senior advisor to the ministry in Finland, so for future reference. And here we have Mario, who represents the French perspective. Thank you for bringing to our attention those three elements. You spoke about understanding EHDS, preparing for the EHDS, and trust also from a different perspective. And you said that we need positive stories. I would like to talk also with all of you today on the positive stories and hear some of those examples. And I think that one of the key concerns shared in your speech, but also in general, and what I've heard from the previous session, as I said, on the co-creating the letter to the Commission, was like, who really, like, where are the resources to deploy, to implement the European health data space? And we know that some countries, as you said, are a bit more mature, and they do that. And I think that here we can look into the example of France. And Mario, you work for the organization that, if I understood correctly, was created actually to help facilitate bringing the European health data space to to life. So can you share your experience, how this came, and where actually those human resources and other resources were mobilized from?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, indeed, I work for the Health Data Hub, which is similar as a health data access body. So we weren't created with EHDS in mind, but maybe one of the organizations that contributed to the idea of health data access bodies. And so what has been the experience? So, well, the idea was we were created as part of the French strategy on artificial intelligence. So the idea is to mobilize health data for the public good and for the public interest. So health data can be used only for projects that are in the public interest, but that doesn't exclude that there's also a commercial interest. So it can be for product innovation, it can be for public data research, and it can be for health policy making. And so one of the aspects I would like to stress, what we have come across as a main challenge, is the work with data holders. Data holders often do not have an incentive to share data. They often have an incentive not to share data because they might be interested in their own academic interests. They might fear costs of making data available. And so, generally speaking, one of the most important points is that you find a win-win relationship with data holders so that they can make data available and also see their own benefit in it. The EHDS regulation provides an obligation for them to make data available, but still, even if there's an obligation, it works much better if they have an own incentive. So that is maybe challenge number one, and what we really saw in implementation, it's something that really needs to be tackled, otherwise it will slow down things immensely. Second, and I think we get back to it, is the question of trust. And I think what is very nice is that Tapani said, the public, generally speaking, is very much in favor of using health data for research and innovation. So actually, it's not an issue of building trust, it's an issue of keeping trust. So we need to do everything we can to keep the trust and the willingness that the public has in health research and health innovation. And then maybe for the last part, which is the implementation and what you meant also with where are the resources. I mean, at least Tapani said there's many countries who are thinking about which body will be health data access body, which body will be tasked with different tasks that are foreseen in the EHDS. And we see it as one of the threats that countries might nominate a huge number of health data access bodies, which will in the end complicate the task for the data users who will have the challenge to identify which will be the relevant health data access body to contact to get access to data. It will complicate the task for data holders who will need to have secure connections to several health data access bodies. And it will complicate the task for citizens who will want to understand what is happening with their data, and they might need to reach out or be in contact with multiple health data access bodies. So the choices that countries make when designating the health data access bodies and setting up some national rules around them will be critical to making EHDS a success.
Perfect, thank you so much. And you talk here about the data holders, and I think often when we speak about the data holders, we speak about also the big hospitals or the big entities that have a lot of data. In the previous session, we actually talked also with the representative of the doctors, and he said, what about the small doctors, small practitioners who will have to invest considerable amount of money, not only once to buy the system, but also to maintain the system, and how this can be financed. So this is also something that we can unpack, like who really should pay for it and where this money should come from. But I see many, I would like to bring you to the discussion, and I see you I don't know if agreeing, but reflecting on what is being said. And I think if I can ask you about those potential incentives for data sharing. Do you see something what kind of incentives we could recommend to actually provide to the data holders that it makes sense?
I think, first of all, I would really like to congratulate you for the introductory remarks, which set the scene really nice. And I very much agree with the comments that Mario has just made. I wanted to clap, only you couldn't hear me clapping. So I think one of the areas where I would like to focus is not just data sharing, but it is also data generating. So we are talking about access to data, and we are talking about the obligation to share data. And what we may be missing here is the huge opportunity of actually using digital technologies for creating huge amount of efficiencies in healthcare. So if you think of the digital technologies as a way to empower hospitals and the general practitioners and the smaller practices in providing healthcare in a different way, and possibly having some more remote monitoring, being able to allocate their resources more efficiently because of this remote monitoring, and do this in a way that also generates data, what this can create is a win-win. So they could use these technologies that generates data, and if they know that this data will then be used in a way which is compatible with societal goals, very much like the model that France has described, then that creates a more positive ecosystem. So think of a world where technology companies, for example, could help hospitals or general practitioners with this type of technologies, with the agreement that the data generated from the usage of these technologies will then be managed through entities, data trusts, we call them in the project we are leading, but not very dissimilar to what they're doing in France. So they will be managed as a data utility. Now, what this means is that the hospitals and the doctors will not have to do work, but they will have to benefit, or they can benefit from innovative technologies. So I think we need to look at technology as a friend. We need to look at technology as somebody who can facilitate the process, and not look at that as an obligation. And just by changing the frame of mind, I think we will be able to accelerate the implementation of EHDS and really deliver on its potential. The additional thing, which comes without saying, is the partnership with the private sector. So the private sector has a lot to gain by a very successful implementation of EHDS. And partnering with the public sector in models similar to what I've described, where technologies are also being invited to play a role in creating also efficiencies in healthcare, can create these incentives that will make the healthcare practitioners as well more willing to embrace this huge opportunity that digital technologies offer for health.
Thank you so much for bringing to our attention the data trust, and I think I want to ask you a little bit more about them, and also how they can be scaled to ensure that we can really cover the whole of Europe and all member states with this. But one thing that you also mentioned is like changing the mindset, and that what came immediately to my mind is also that we really have different mindset in different countries of Europe, and also from the other perspective, if you think about the innovation scoreboard of Europe, we have not Europe of 2 speeds, we have Europe of 4 speeds. We have emerging innovators, we have the moderate innovators, strong innovators, leading innovators. Not necessarily the leading innovator is also strong in the digital health, like for example, Ireland, there is also discrepancy there. But I'm immediately thinking that the mindset is not probably everywhere the same, and even if we all agree that the EHDS might bring multiple benefits, some countries understand this like better, and then some see it as an obstacle or a hurdle. I don't know if Tapani would like to maybe comment on this challenge of 2, 3, or 4 speed Europe in implementation of EHDS, and how to avoid that, and how to help the member states understand the benefits of the EHDS.
Well, of course, I think that many European initiatives have helped to bring countries up to the same speed or similar speed. Of course, the essence of these scoreboards is that always you have the leaders and the less leaders, those who are catching up. But I think that the key point is that everybody is making progress and going ahead. I think that is an important thing, and I have seen it many times that these European initiatives, they're actually then stimulating stimulating policies in the member states.
Do you feel like that, Mario? That the initiatives stimulate the initiatives in the member states? And
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we've personally and also as an organization, we have benefited, for instance, from working with Tapani and other Finnish organizations within TEDAS, and that has helped us, well, getting actually more engaged in European topics and European projects, and yeah, learn there from others. And beyond the projects, it's also, well, the legislative texts that are an opportunity, even when one has already something in place. So in France, we put a legislative framework in place where certain things are similar to EHDS, certain things are different, but EHDS gives us the opportunity to reflect on what we did and change the pieces that didn't work so well. So even for countries that have already something in place, yeah, those actions help, putting it into perspective and getting better. And so I think, yeah, as Tapani said, it's really about moving everyone. It's not only for helping some to catch up, it's also for some others to get continuously better.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've seen the EU with different digital health initiatives with, I don't know, e-prescription, that it's still very slow progress and very slow implementation, and it's only 11 countries, and even if it all looks good on the paper, then not necessarily is like implemented in practice. It's not necessary that you can travel from Finland to Poland and realize your e-prescription without any hurdles.
But I would like to challenge that a bit.
Please.
Creating a countrywide electronic system doesn't happen overnight. So I think that on the policy making, we can make legislation much faster than it can be then implemented on the ground. And that is where the kind of discrepancy comes, that it's easy to make a declaration and ministers put their names underneath something, but then mobilizing people on the country level, at the data holder level, in pharmacies, all that, it takes time. And it takes also resources.
It takes time, resources, but it also takes political commitment on the national level and taking this as the priority, I think. I don't know, if I try to be very inclusive and bring you to the discussion. I don't know if you wanted to add something here. Judging from the smile.
Are you asking
yes.
me? I'm smiling because I've been thinking about how we've been implementing digital initiatives in other sectors. So if you think about banking and how we can all manage our banking regardless of where we are in Europe, and how we just wave our phones and we pay and we manage all our accounts, or if you think about how many films you have downloaded on your phone from Netflix, technology seems to be able to allow us to do miracles. So how can it be so difficult to manage e-prescription or to manage something as a lot of potential applications in digital health? So I don't think that it's so complicated. I think it's a matter of mindset, and it is a matter, and I'm becoming a bit of a broken record there, of potentially learning how to use more in partnership with the private sector.
Well, I will join you also in this being surprised sometimes how difficult things can be when it comes to digital health, and why I'm from Poland and I live in Finland, and I should be able to realize the Finnish prescription in Poland, but it seems like very, very difficult process, and no one really knows. But it also feels that no one gets an education. No, the pharmacists they know that something like that exists, but they don't really know what does it mean and how they should use the systems to realize the prescription. And I always, with colleagues and with people, I say that when I'm in Finland, I believe that the EHDS will happen and it will become a reality. And then when I'm in Poland, I don't even know what EHDS is, and I doubt. Of course, I don't want to underestimate all the efforts done by the organizations and by the government there. Let me now engage you, the audience, a little in the discussion. And first, you can think if you have a comment or a question. Maybe you have some solution to the issue, how to make the things easier and not so complicated when it comes to the digital health. Of course, we can learn from banking, we can learn from travel, and from other industries. And I would like to maybe ask to get the second Slido question, so you can join me on slido.com with the hashtag Dune for the second question, which is actually about the biggest barrier to gaining public trust in the secondary use of health data. Trust has been already mentioned as a challenge, and I would like to use this question as a bridge to the second part of our discussion to talk actually how to generate, how to build, how to improve trust. And here maybe when I'm waiting for your responses to this question, again, I will refer to my personal experience when I travel. I mean, I think we always say that the trust in the public services, in the government, in the Nordic countries is very high, and then in the southern countries is so-so. And when I travel to Poland, when I spend time with my family and I listen to the discussions, people are really full of doubts about how their data is being used. Many people from older generation, they really don't want to use, for example, data from their credit card when paying in the internet. They're afraid that they will leak, someone will use it. So the same about speaking of the health data. So it's not because they don't know the benefit of the health data being used for research. It's simply because for over decades, this distrust in the public authorities, public services was being built, and I don't think that a simple campaign will help them to overcome this distrust. But coming back to the question, what do you think is the biggest barrier to gaining public trust in secondary use of health data? So here is the lack of transparency about how data is used. So it's really like, I think, lack of understanding information, what is really happening with the data. So you, Tapani, said that, yes, we know that people are generally happy with using the data for research, but we also know about the different data breaches, leaks. In Finland, there was a huge scandal last year about the massive amount of data leaking from the mental health clinic. Concern about data privacy and security, inequitable access across member states, insufficient public consultation, and others. So lack of transparency about how data will be used, that's one main concern, but also data privacy, security. And here I would like that brings me to Nicola. You work in the organization called Understanding Patient Data, but you don't only work with, you're not a patient organization, right? You work with to promote also this access to health data. And what is in your opinion, the best way to gain trust of population or support gaining trust of population?
So I think if I had the answer to that, like all of our problems would be solved.
Of course, but looking for these positive stories here.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about the public, obviously it's not just one big group of people. There's so much diversity in there, diversity of experience as well in terms of how people have been treated by the public sector and different services. And in England over the last year, there's been an interesting piece of research that's looked into how people feel about their health data being used, but segmenting those different groups from kind of confident data enthusiasts to people who are more skeptical, and understanding different characteristics of those groups and what communications and activities might actually be useful with different groups, rather than trying to use one technique to communicate with everyone. The other thing that I would highlight is that people's trust in the system depends on their experience of it. So, if you've had mental health problems, or you've had an abortion, or you've been discriminated against in your job for a health condition that you have, or something like that, it will impact how willing you are for that data to be shared. And also, lots of the times when the government or the health service communicates about health data use, it's always very positive. But then when those accidents and bad things do happen, they have much more of an impact, because it's felt like, well, nobody told me this could happen or this was going to happen. And that's when some of those organizations that are maybe a bit more privacy conscious can then affect how people think. So we have an opt-out in England, and every time there's a bit of a controversy, the opt-outs increase, and we get into a bit of a spiral, and it doesn't end well for the government or the health service. So we try to be a bit more realistic about those communications and explain that, data breaches do happen, but they are rare considering how much health data is used and how much of it is used all the time. People don't really realize how many different health studies are going on, how much health data is being used in the health service on a daily basis. And when you put it into context, it's not actually a bad system.
Exactly. And Mario, you took the microphone. Would like to comment also from the French perspective?
Yeah, thanks. Maybe the first point is the data is there. It won't go away even if you don't use it. So just to say that people can try to steal the data, it will be the case in any case. So unless you get rid of the whole digitalization of the health system altogether. So it's not a question about having the data or not. It's about how you use it and making a benefit out of the existence of the data. So that's maybe point number one. Then point number two is on the French side, we have actually built a citizen department at the Health Data Hub from the very conception of the Health Data Hub, where we involve citizen organizations and patient organizations, and they're represented in our governance. And we push at local level to have hospitals also include the same organizations at the more local level, also in their local governance systems. So we actually learn a lot from them. We benefit a lot of them from them, because they then go on and build trust in the communities at the local level, at the national level. So for us, it's been a very positive experience, and they are the best advocates for health data use. They have, pretty much a life interest partly in having health data being used, and so they can talk the best about it. So that's maybe point number two. And point number three is, I think what Nicola said is how do you prepare for crisis communication? You can't just wait for an accident to happen and then not know how to react. And I think that goes back a bit to what we heard in the plenary before about the shifting sands. We are living in societies and in a period where tension is there in society, and we know when something happens, it can be very bad, so we should better be prepared in case something happens and be realistic. So there will not be a situation where there will never be any accidents, but let's make sure that we use the data to increase the public benefits first.
Yeah. I think when you also said, that making benefit out of data, that sometimes it also resonates, maybe not in a most positive
public
way
benefits.
With the public, right? The public benefit, yeah. And Tapani, we established that you don't come from France, even if it's still there, but from Finland, and you worked for a long time for the Finnish ministry, and you were part of all this also system that created trust. Can you tell us a bit more what is behind this high trust of society and what are the factors that build this trust?
Maybe the reason is that in some countries, the Nordic countries, there's a generally high level of trust in authorities. And when there's a high level of trust in authorities, be it police or health authorities or the government, then that also goes into the trust of this, how responsibly health data is being used. So, but where does that then come from? Probably it is from the long-term history of these societies. And I think that it is something that in every country we can create, but it is definitely something which is not created overnight, but as a long process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a long process, and this also, when I often hear about making investments in the, trust-building campaigns, I'm a bit skeptical about them, because it's not. I think it's not about campaigning. I think it's like you, Nicola, said. It's people's trust in the system comes from their experience of the system, and it must be respected that it takes time, and then you have to really earn the trust of the population. So my message to the policymakers and the governments would be to always to gain this trust and not try to buy it through the campaign. But nevertheless, also when I think about the different demographics, different population groups, there's often this group that we don't know if really, like, there may be older people. I know that many older people are digitally savvy, but then still there is maybe the older generation that not necessarily will benefit from all the digitalization in healthcare. Do you feel like that there is like a group that we, despite putting some investment, we will not reach?
I don't think so, and I think it's quite mixed, and even in the same groups there's quite differing opinions, and sometimes a finding that comes out in some of the work we've done as well is people will have perceptions about another group and the other group will have perceptions about them, and they're actually entirely opposite. So older people sometimes tend to have more trust in authority in the government and are actually quite happy for them to get on with it. But some other older people are a bit more skeptical about technology in general and therefore aren't very keen on it. And we've seen the same with young people. There was a study recently by the Health Foundation in the UK, and it showed, particularly in terms of AI, young people are probably more comfortable with what it is and the role of technology in their lives, but they're actually a lot more skeptical and not very happy about the role of AI potentially in healthcare. So there's kind of both sides in all of these different groups.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
May I? Yes, I'm representing in this panel the older generation. What we have learned in Finland is actually that it is not so much about the age, it's about the digital literacy. Some older people are very familiar in using digital tools. And also what we have learned is that if people have learned to use digital tools when they have been younger, still at work, they carry this knowledge with them when they are getting older. Of course, there's a situation where you fall ill and you have a illness which is impairing your cognition, then it starts getting difficult. But basically what we have, I think that the message is very positive. We have seen that regardless of age, as long as there is a cognitive capacity in people, they can learn to use. And there have been lots of examples in Finland that age tech can be used with older people. Mm-hmm.
And then also thinking about this, learning from the other sectors, if people use the banking and the booking, they know how to book their trip, they also can probably use the app, but the app has also the health app has also be user-friendly and developed in a... I see that many, you raise your hand, please.
Thank you, Carolina. And that was very much along these lines that I actually wanted to comment, because despite what Tapani says, I'm also old. And in older times in my life, I used to work to make broadband happen. So that old, when broadband wasn't there. And back then, we were thinking that the older people will not benefit from broadband. And we're talking about the digital divide. What technology showed to us is that it all depends on how innovative the technology is. Because older people, it's true, they didn't like computers, but they have no problem with smartphones. So you see a lot of older people right now navigating various apps with smartphones where they couldn't manage the computers. So I'm a big believer in the possibility of technology to innovate and solve humanity's problems and challenges. We just need to let it happen, let it do its job and not resist it, because I think technophobia is a technophobia, or by in particularly the decision makers, is what is to me the biggest problem and the biggest barrier that we have here. And if you allow me, I would also like to make another comment. So coming from myself, a pharmaceutical industry, I'm allowed to say it, that there is a societal resistance to the idea that health data will be used commercially or will be used to create profit. And I think we have to respect that. So we need to be very transparent on how health data is going to be used. So in the context of the project that I've mentioned earlier, we had a lot of consultations with patients about what would take them, or how they felt about data sharing. And the one thing that became very clear is that they really wanted an opt-out type of mechanism. So they were keen to share data, they wanted to share data for research, but they wanted to be in control. They wanted to be able to say when and for which sector or company or whatever query they would actually not like their data to be included in the data set. And in the beginning, the researchers in the project, regardless of whether they were coming from public or private, they kept talking about the various biases that this might create. The reality, however, is, or that how difficult it would have been to implement this technologically, that again, when we spoke to technology companies, they told us absolutely no problem. It's really not a problem from a technological point of view to really implement an opt-out. And I think with this type of way, I think, at least in my experience in the work that we've been doing, we saw that there was no problem with the patients and the citizens in general about sharing their data.
But when you said that there is, from technological point of view, there is absolutely no problem, I think that this is also the very often shared understanding that technology is there, legislation is there, people readiness is to share data is there, and then still we experience those barriers and those problems too. Yeah.
But I think it goes back to what Mario said when he first started speaking, where we've seen the resistance is actually the data holders. It's the data holders who resist the idea of sharing data, because they often see this as a source of power or intelligence for them. So that is where we've seen the resistance. And that is that's why I mentioned earlier, I wanted to clap when he was speaking, because we've experienced the same thing exactly. We need to create incentives for the data holders to share.
Perfect.
They need to see this as an opportunity, and they shouldn't be seeing this as a threat. That is, in my view, at least, the core of the problem.
I have one comment on that, but I see that Mario raised the mic, so please.
Yeah, thanks. It's not, just to clarify that it's not to be a blame game on data holders. I think they have partly incentives not to share data with, which Correct. Can be put forward by publication need, etc. So it's just to say we have to have better incentives for them also to find the value in there. It's not just to say, okay, data holders are bad people. Okay. No. And then the second part maybe is that citizens also expect that we, at the European level, we are able to use health data for the public good and in the public interest, and that the algorithms and the tools of tomorrow are appropriate for our populations and that they deliver value within the health systems. And so if there is a risk of not using European health data and being tomorrow in a situation where we're not sure that the solutions of tomorrow work for us. Mm-hmm.
And then still coming back to the discussion, and one thing that came to my mind, and maybe doing the whole circle in the discussion, was that if the technology is there, if the legislation is there, and then still we struggle, I also think that sometimes maybe it comes from this fragmentation or lack of harmonization of the implementation. Something we learned probably from, I don't know if you agree, but what I see from GDPR, the implementation, that yes, GDPR is there and it's very, very good framework, yet the different countries have the different understanding or interpretation, and some are absolutely strict. And if you can imagine, for example, in Poland, the doctors are afraid to ask the patient in the corridor by their name. They give them the initials or the numbers, and they call people by the numbers or by colors or some other creative ways, because they're afraid to say, please, Carolina, come, because they are afraid that GDPR will be broken and the controller will come and find them. So I'm always afraid that the same will happen to EHDS, that we will have very different understanding of what is really in this legislation, and then the technology will not help us. I would like to, again, turn back to our audience. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and some inspirations and good stories. And while you're thinking maybe to ask us a question or give us a comment, I will look into Manuela, who is in charge of who sees the questions coming, hopefully comments or questions coming from our audience online and in the room through the app. And is there something that you would like to share with us?
Yes, thank you. I will start actually on the incentives for the data holders specifically. So there are several questions on that, so I'll try to group them together.
Yeah.
One of the questions is how much of the EHDS legislation will be obliging data holders to share the data specifically, and this data, we assume it's going to be in a structured way, and following up to that question, will it be made appropriate for use for machine learning algorithms? And also coming to incentiveness specifically is there's a lot of investment, public investment that is going out to build the EHDS system. Is how is EU securing return on the public investment so that the health systems do not have to buy back on the private achievements paying really high money or prices back? So
All
maybe you
right.
can comment on that.
I feel that you should start here to respond.
No, happy to. I mean, it's a lot of questions. I won't answer.
Yes. You don't have to answer them all. Yes.
All of them. But yeah, I think for what is related to the whole question of incentives and building a relationship with data holders, you have very different data holders that you're talking about. I think the very first question was, to which extent are they obliged? I think the EHDS regulation for the secondary use part is very clear. All data holders, apart from very few exemptions, will have to share data when there's a data permit in place. So when a health data access body has said, yeah, this data permit should be granted, then they will have to share data, and otherwise, yeah, there might be a risk of legal pursuit or others. So the obligation is there, and it's really clear. Then for the incentives, I think you need to think it through, and health data access bodies, to me, can play a crucial role in there. So, for instance, they can help data holders respect GDPR obligations. They can help reduce burden on data holders, for instance, with regards to data extraction, with regards to data pseudonymization. There's many tasks that are in the process of making health data where health data access bodies can support, and where data holders' burden can be lifted, and where then they might have an interest in helping to facilitate sharing the data.
Thank you. And on the public investments and return on investments, Tapani, would you like to comment?
Well, I think that the biggest investment needs, they are again coming from the data holder side, because they need to create their they need to tweak their processes, they need to make their data available. While, for example, in the TEHDAS joint action, we calculated a little bit the costs of setting up the health data access body, but we realized that actually the costs of setting up that central system is limited. But what was very, very difficult to estimate was that if we ask the data holder to provide access to data or make their data available, how much do they need to invest so that the data is easily made available? That was very difficult to estimate. But our best bet was that the very big part of the costs are coming from there, but they are also then linked when the data holders, which means usually healthcare facilities, when they are upgrading their systems, then they need to take that into account. So I think that the investment is needed, and I think that the money will be at short supply in many countries, because many countries are facing budgetary difficulties.
Okay, just to add very quickly, we have one concrete example in France where we currently investing, or the Ministry of Health is investing 75 million euros in building hospital data warehouses. And so the idea behind that is really to have a common set of data elements collected at the level of hospitals that can be used for a multitude of purposes. And one purpose that it's being used for, projected to being used for, is actually a current project that is EU funded, and that is for upgrading the national electronic health surveillance, disease surveillance. So actually the hospital data warehouse data collection will support the National Health Surveillance Institute's task to do public health surveillance, and will provide daily or weekly indicators on certain diseases, be it hospital-acquired infections, be it severe acute respiratory infections or others. And so these investments into the data structuring at the level of hospitals will have really a strong benefit on costs at the level of the Health Surveillance Institute. At the same time, the same data collected, and thinking again of Peter in the audience, we use them and we mobilize them, and we know another hospital at the French level is already using them to contribute to the Darwin EU initiative, also being partly receiving some European funding through that. And so those investments, they're not a one-time investment. So many of those investments can pay off throughout different projects and have co-benefits, be it in surveillance, be it in regulatory, be it in research. So really we can create those solutions.
Yeah, this is very good and concrete example, and as you said, it's also it's not investment only for one purpose, but can be used for many. Do we have some other questions? Yeah. So let me just ask, do we have also questions from the audience? There is one. Okay, so maybe let's take one question, and then we come back to the questions through from the app. Yeah, if you can introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello, I'm Antoine Boivin from Canada. I have a question about who's the owner, ultimately, of the data? There was a metaphor about banking. In banking, it's very clear who the owner is. You know, the money is owned by the clients. And the client decides who he entrusts his or her money with, who he shares it with, and he has access, or she has access to it. In Canada, we've learned from Indigenous people that regarding health data, key questions that we need to ask are about ownership, control, access, and possession, OCAP principle. And it's funny, when we have these discussions about health data, we tend to lose sight about who owns the data ultimately. And when we talk, for example, about data holders sharing their data, it's funny because it's as if it becomes a currency that you share with other people. I really like your comment about having a clearer picture of different publics. And I think it also comes with a clearer picture about different potential users with whom to share the data. And so,
yeah,
I don't know what it is in Europe, but in Canada, patients do not have access to their own data most of the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I will ask Nicola, and then I will ask also Mani to comment, as Mani is working on the governance model in regard to data.
Yeah, so we've found that language around who owns it is just really unhelpful, because no one really owns it. Like, there are different legitimate legal interests in that data. So, you know, from a GDPR perspective, the organization that is a data controller controls that data, but it doesn't mean they're the only ones that have any rights over it. There are multiple people, organizations that have rights over data, and that data is about you as an individual and as a person. So we've found kind of talking about rights and interests in data as a more helpful way to communicate that multitude of parties.
And then Mani, if we might hear from you.
So where we've landed is that it's the patient who is in control of their data. Now, it's not necessarily ownership, because there is not a real asset here, but the patient the ecosystem we are building is in control of their data, and on the basis of a patient agreement, trusts the technology partner with whom they enter into this agreement to share the data with whomever they want their data to be shared. So the patient will say which doctor should see their data, and will also be able to control which queries will be run into their data sets. The data, this patient data, is being stored in what we call a data trust, and we've been very much inspired by banking, because the whole concept is that by putting this data in this data trust, you create an independent legal entity that manages this data on behalf of the patients and on the basis of the patient agreement. So with very clear rules and guardrails, in a non-for-profit manner, so in the public interest or in societal interest. And this generates a continuous revenue, because this type of data, in particularly when it is standardized, and we didn't talk enough about it, but that's a really important element that we will need to consider about the EHDS. So if this data is standardized, it's actually a treasure trove for any type of research, including for the life science industry in general. So if we could look at the outcomes, the patient outcomes, in a standardized way in routine care around Europe, that could reduce the needs for, or it would make research, let's put it that way, all scientific research, easier, faster, and cheaper. And this would have huge benefits for society, and it would pay big time for the investment needed to create the infrastructure to actually create this data. While at the same time, and as I said before, the possibility to use the digital technologies for creating the digital communications between patients and physicians, and therefore efficiencies in the healthcare system, would create additional efficiencies for the healthcare. So there are business models around there that could allow us to pay for the digital health revolution, and actually become very positive about it, or allow us to save a lot of money for the taxpayers.
Business models are emerging, and I think there is lots of interest in them, like how they really work in order to also be ethical and provide the public benefit. I think we have time for one more round for the questions, so now you have to cluster them even more. Mm-hmm.
Yes, this brings actually to the, let's say, a few questions that are going in the same direction. Okay. Knowing that some healthcare systems are either way struggling, not only with implementing the EHDS, but also offering other necessities and I mean, the system itself. Also knowing that there are varied development of ICT systems in the different member states. I think the big question at the end that everyone is asking, are we being realistic with the EHDS being implemented? And how long will it really take to have it implemented?
I love this question. I think it's a perfect question towards the end of the session. Are we being realistic?
Well, I mean, I think that the name of the session is Reaching for the Cloud. So, I mean, it's not a question of just being realistic. It's a question of giving us an ambition that allows us to move forward. If the question is, do I think in 4 years from now, all the data sources that are in the EHDS regulation will be made available in a very quick manner to prospective data users? The answer is probably no. Will we have made tremendous progress towards facilitating that access within those 4 years? Well, I hope yes, because the world is not waiting for us, and so we better try to facilitate, we better try to encourage the use of health data for public interest. So, well, are we being realistic? Maybe. I mean, the realism is in that we need to push on our level to facilitating and to being the change we want to see. So, I mean, realism, if it's pessimistic, it's not really realism.
Mm-hmm. Nicola?
I'm an optimist. I think, I mean, I don't know if you'll get there in 4 years, but I think you do need to have the goal to help guide where things are going. I mean, I like the expression that if you shoot for the moon, you'll end up in the stars somewhere. That's probably a good place to be. So yeah, I think it will get there, and it will develop as the implementation happens, and we'll start learning what works, what doesn't work, and iterate the process from there. We don't need to know everything right now.
Absolutely, I think that it is impossible to say for the moment which of these elements in these 40 pages which we have been discussing today, which of them will be in place in 4 years' time. But I think that, as I mentioned, that there will be an evaluation after 8 years, a focused evaluation and a general evaluation after 10 years. That gives you an idea that what is the timeline needed for implementation. And I think that during that time we have learned that how much can be done in different member states. And of course, I'm sure that in many member states the progress has been very fast. But of course, some other member states who are only starting now, they have generated a good basis then. But you cannot say that across Europe you have kind of a dream level.
That's what I said. Like when I said that in some countries I feel that yeah, it's realistic, and in some countries I don't know. But many.
You may find strange what I'm going to say, but I actually think it's the shortage of healthcare professionals around Europe that will make us being able to achieve the goal. Because there will be a need for us to think differently about digital solutions in health. And by bringing in digital solutions in health, this will just force us, I think, as a society to think differently about health data as well.
Mm-hmm. And what does our audience think? Are we realistic here? Who would say yes and would raise their hand for a yes here? Are we realistic here? But I wanted to also that the question was framed, which I think I don't know how much we took this into account, but it was that the healthcare systems struggle and they're underinvested, and then there is also lots of different crises. So I don't know. This is of course framing the question, but are we realistic? So I don't know. People are a bit shy. Yes, okay. And the rest think that no way, we will not have the EHDS in place. So, are you okay? So maybe can we get the microphone to a person who raised? Is it yes? Why do you think we are realistic?
Hello, this is Franja Čajić from Merck, pharmaceutical industry. We in research, in pharma and in any other research, we have always been using data and depending on data to get our drugs approved, and so we have a huge experience already about using data. This is very ambitious, but why being pessimistic? If we've been able to improve the lifetime of people for I don't know how many years now comparing to 100 years ago, imagine what more we can do, and it was also because of the research and the data that we were able to collect, analyze, and benefit from. So I think we should be ambitious, but we should also make sure that we move the needle, that we talk about it, that we create that trust and no fear of sharing. And I know there are some initiatives already existing, like data saves lives and so on, but probably we need to communicate more about this and really be more ambitious, because as Manny was saying, if it worked in banking sector, why wouldn't it work in healthcare? So, and it wouldn't be here if some critical amount of people wouldn't believe that it can work, right?
Brilliant. Thank you for those words of encouragement. And you said that we should be even more ambitious than that. So I wonder what this more ambition would look like. I think it's the time now to thank you all for the engagement and to join me in the round of applause for our speakers who shared their positive stories. And I think what you said, we need more of those positive stories. So thanks so much for joining me on the stage today. And I'm very sorry that we were not able to take more questions, but I think we are all here. Well, We are all here, and many stuck in Vienna, unfortunately, because of the flooding and the train situation. But I think we are very happy to connect with all of you here also after the session. And for all the participants joining us online, we thank you for your attention and for your engagement. So thank you again, and thank you. And maybe let's take a picture before we disconnect with Many, if it's possible to get us a picture. Manuela, will you take us a picture? Oh yeah, we joined the... Yes. Mario is here? Yes. Okay, and if we can take the full... Oh, okay.